In a previous video, I showed you how to install Node-RED on different platforms. In this video, I'll show you how easy it is to create an application. Node-RED works by sending messages along the connectors between nodes. There needs to be a node to send the initial message, and this could be when a network request is received, when someone posts to social media, when an event is generated by hardware, or an event initiated by a software timer. One node, which is often used to send the initial message in a flow, is the Inject node. This node can be used to manually send a message. But looking at the node configuration, you'll see it can be configured to send a message when Node-RED starts up, and also to send a message at a set time or at regular intervals. The Inject node configuration allows you to specify what gets sent in the message. The default is to send a timestamp, but that can be changed. With the Inject node, you can easily test flows by simulating other starter nodes, by getting the Inject node to send the same content that a different node would send when a certain event occurs. Similarly, the Debug node allows you to see what messages are flowing. You enable or disable the Debug node outputting content to the debug panel using the button at the end of the node. You can also configure what information is output to the debug panel. By default, the payload content of the incoming message is output, but you can alter that using the node configuration. To help you organize your application flows, you can create additional tabs in the user interface editor and put different flows on different tabs. Use the menu, then Flows section to add, rename and delete flow editor tabs. When Node-RED runs, all flows on all tabs are active. When you make a change to a flow, you have the option of how you deploy the changes. On the deploy button is a drop-down, which allows you to redeploy everything, only deploy flows with changes, or just the nodes that have changes. This allows you to avoid having to restart flows where no changes have occurred. Nodes are self-documenting, with the documentation appearing in the Info tab when a node is selected. The documentation should advise how the operation of the node can be modified through configuration or by adding content to the messages sent into the node. Let's create a small application that gets the latest news. I'm located in the UK, so I'm going to use the BBC service, but you may want to select a different feed. To retrieve the feed, find the feed parse node in the advanced section of the palette and drag it onto the sheet. Select it and look at the Info tab. You'll see how the feed content would be made available to the flow. Opening up the configuration, I can set the feed URL and also the frequency I want updates to be received. To see the content, I can use a debug node. Add this to the sheet and connect the nodes. Then pressing deploy makes the new application live, and switching to the debug tab, I can see the content. You'll notice by default I only see the payload content sent from the feed parse node. To see the additional content, open up the debug node configuration, and now I can select different parts of the message content. Or I can select to show the entire message. But you'll notice that the debug panel will truncate content that's too long. So now we have the news feed in our application. I want to see if the news is good or bad. So using the sentiment node applies a very simple algorithm that looks at the content of the text and determines if the words usually relate to positive or negative sentiment. Again, the Info tab provides the detail about what the node does, so you can research the algorithm further if you wish. Connecting up the sentiment to the feed, we can now access a score for each news item. I'll add a debug node to output the sentiment that gets attached to the message, but you'll notice that if I display the entire message, I cannot see the sentiment data as it's truncated. So I'll select to just see the sentiment content. This video has shown how to start creating applications using Node-RED. There are hundreds of nodes available to enable you to rapidly create your applications.